listening to IBGR.network, and IBGR is our call sign as a radio station. But we are more than a radio station, much more. We are a network of global entrepreneurs coming together to create and share space for collaboration and business success. I am your host, Jan Robberts, Global Influencer. And this is episode number 5 already. Where does the time go? On the 5th of November. Remember, the 5th of November. And this is P1053 if you're looking for the show notes, because cultural awareness in business in our people lane, people skills for success at IBGR.network. As I just said, you can go to our website, IBGR.network, and download the show notes. And if you're listening, you've probably already have the app as well. Oh, let me talk a little bit about the app. The app, you need to... IBGR have created an amazing app that you don't have to no longer have to necessarily go to your website on your laptop. You can now carry it with you wherever you go. You need to download the app. Again, you need to go to the website to download it, but you need to go download the app, because there is so much more than just listening to us. There's information available, there is show notes available, everything is available from the app as well. So if you've got a mobile phone, which I'm sure most of you have, my dad is an exception, he still hasn't got one. But if you have one, then go and download the IBGR app and just enjoy listening wherever you are. Okay, having said that, is now, where are we going next? Well, we're always talking about our difference in many ways. As we are firmly involved in a global economy, it has become increasingly more important to understand our differences and different habits, our different cultures, and how we can connect and build better relationships at all levels. So, let us take a closer look at culture itself and what it means. Now, culture is a characteristic and knowledge of a particular group of people, encompassing language, religion, cuisine, social habits, and music and arts. I just mentioned that, but I'll mention it again as I go into it. But the word culture is, of course, derived from a French term, which in turn came from a Latin colere, which means to tend the earth and grow, or cultivation and nurture. That's especially for the people who just joined me and missed the first session. That's where we're at just now. But as I did some more research into cultures around the world, it's always fascinating what you find when you're looking for it. And as a dear friend of mine and coaching master said as well, he's trained many thousands of people. You only get answers to the questions you ask. So sometimes we need to start asking better questions as people. And look, preparing for this show, I was really looking into. I got 17 pages of notes, by the way, just stuff that I really. I'll have it for me now, that no two shows have to be the same anymore, but I'll have it there for me, and I read through it all, and it's amazing. But the Center for Advanced Research on Language Acquisition goes a step further, defining culture as shared patterns of behaviors and interactions, cognitive constructs, and understanding that are learned by socialization. Oh, that's a fancy word. Socialization. Thus, it can be seen as the growth of a group identity fostered by social patterns unique to the group. We talk about tribes and how some groups attract each other, but culture encompasses religion, food, what we wear, how we wear it, our language, marriage, music, what we believe is right or wrong, how we sit at the table, how we greet visitors, how we behave with loved ones, and a million other things. But I think you get the picture. It's amazing when you, even how you sit at the table, and who sits down first, and can you sit down already? In certain cultures it is, I know in some of the Western cultures, if you walk into an office, you just cannot just go and sit down. You have to wait to be asked to be seated. Some other cultures, in Africa as well, people just automatically sit down because that's what the chair is for. So totally different. But in business, it is both sides. It doesn't mean that if one person sits down that he will get into trouble because he sat down. No, the other person also needs to be more culturally aware, especially if for a Western, like in the Netherlands, for example, if somebody from there goes to South Africa, which has happened, that they do business, that they don't get upset if somebody sits down before being asked. They need to realize people do that in different cultures. They don't need to be asked. And the other way around. Culture goes both ways. When two or more people come together, we all need to understand each other's cultures, so we don't get upset so easily. Don't go crying in the bush, as my partner Arthur always says, but there is no need for any of that, because we need to accept each other. We need to be a bit less sensitive, but that doesn't mean that we can't learn each other's cultures, because it is very important and very advantageous when you do so. I can tell you plenty of stories, and maybe I'll talk about some of them. But I'm just briefly and broadly going through the different cultures, just to give a little bit of an idea where some of the differences lie. But the first of all is the Western culture. Well, the term Western culture has come to define the culture from European countries, as well as those have been heavily influenced by European immigration, such as the United States, according to Khan University. There you go. That's some of my research. And Western culture has its roots in the classical period of the Greco-Roman era and the rise of Christianity in the 14th century. See, other drivers of Western culture include Latin, Celtic, Germanic, and Hellenic ethnic and linguistic groups. So today the influences of Western culture can be seen in almost every country around the world. Now, is that not amazing? It also shows, because when you go on culture trips to certain, if you look at Greece, all the different monuments, the Colosseums, and all the different old monuments that we've seen in movies and we've heard about and read about, and then you go to the likes of Turkey or places like Iran or in totally different countries, and Pachacutia, that's a whole different ball game. No, in Paraguay, but in those regions of Latin America, I can't even think of the name just now. But when you go and see all the different the Incas from the Incas, and when you look at all the different old cultural things that cultures get a lot more mixed now, because we travel all over the world. It's global, and there's a lot of cultures, like big cities like London, for example. It's a mix of cultures, and many big cities are. But then you've got the Eastern cultures. Eastern cultures generally refer to the societal norms of countries in the Far East in Asia, such as China, Japan, Vietnam, North Korea, South Korea, and the Indian subcontinent. And of course, our radio station is there too. We've got an Asian time zone. And like the West, Eastern cultures was heavily influenced by religion during its early development. But it was also heavily influenced by the growth and harvesting of rice, according to the book Pathways to Asian Civilizations, Tracing the Origins and Spread of Rice and Rice Cultures by Dorian Fuller. But in general, in Eastern cultures there is less of a distinction between secular society and religious philosophy than there is in the West. And that is, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, this depends on which way you've been brought up, of course. Latin culture. Now, many of the Spanish-speaking nations are considered part of the Latin culture, while the geographic regions is widespread, because Latin America is typically defined as those parts of the Central American, South American, and Mexico where Spanish or Portuguese are the dominant languages. Originally, the term Latin America was used by the French geographers to differentiate between Anglo and Romance, the Latin-based languages, according to the University of Texas. While Spain and Portugal are on the European continent, they are considered the key influences of what is known as Latin culture, which denotes people using languages derived from Latin, also known as the Romance languages. Allez. Yes, of course, the Romance languages. And yes, of course, every time you see Latin, and you can see it in their dancing and all that, the whole 9 yards, if you say, but the whole thing, even the way they interact with each other, you can see the differences. But as I said earlier, also as well, it's equally important of the parts that you cannot see. The things that the iceberg and the water. And I say, download the show notes, you'll find out a lot more about it. But then there is Middle Eastern culture. Now, Middle East is also part of this Zulu zone, as Bill said earlier. That's Zulu because of if you were in the military, but otherwise it's prime time. The prime zone. Middle Eastern culture. Well, the countries of the Middle East have some but not all things in common. And this is not a surprise, since the area consists of approximately 20 countries, and the Arabic language is one that is common throughout the region. However, the wide variety of dialects can sometimes make communication difficult. Religion is another culture area that the countries of the Middle East have in common. The Middle East is the birthplace of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Who would have known that all three came from the Middle East? Eh? Some of you might not, but you know now. Also, I mean, they talk about dialect, and that's always very interesting because when I'm in Scotland just now, in the north of Scotland, near Inverness, where some say that in Inverness they speak the Queen's English. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that the Queen speaks it, but yes, it is one of the least dialected accents, as they say. And if you then go to places like Glasgow, if you've ever been in Glasgow, you know that dialects are sometimes difficult to communicate with. Glasgow, some of the English ones, there is so many different dialects, and now the dialects are slowly dying. They're slowly dying because people are much more. They travel much more. I mean, before that, they used to be in their own communities, and they have very rarely left. So there was much more dialect and much more community, much more other kind of things. But this is happening everywhere, and including the Eastern culture. And then you've got the African culture. Well, the continent of Africa is essential to all cultures because, get this, human life originated on this continent and began to migrate to other areas in the world around 60,000 years ago, according to the Natural History Museum. But in London, other researchers, like those from the Estonian Biocenter in Tartu, believe that the first migration may have been much earlier, as early as 120,000 years ago. That's very interesting. Researchers come to these conclusions by studying human genomes from various cultures to trace their DNA to common ancestors. Fossil records also factor into some of these theories. And I visited the Cradle of Humankind outside of Johannesburg, which is fascinating. And we really need to actually think into that a little bit more. And, for that, I will also come back to this in 2 to 3 minutes when we take a short break just now. But join us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter at ibgr.network. And I will see you back in a few minutes. Don't go away.